Have you ever imagined developing affection for someone who has taken you hostage or caused you harm? Sounds unthinkable, right? But this is what happens in the curious case of Stockholm Syndrome. In the realm of psychology, Stockholm Syndrome stands as a paradoxical phenomenon where victims develop emotional bonds with their captors. It's a psychological response that seems to contradict our very instincts for survival. This baffling condition has been the subject of much debate and research, leading to a myriad of theories about its causes and effects. We'll be delving into its fascinating history, exploring what triggers this peculiar syndrome, and uncovering its common signs and symptoms. We'll also look at its prevalence, raising the question, how common is Stockholm Syndrome really? And importantly, we'll touch upon the possible treatment methods that can help individuals reclaim their lives from this enigmatic condition. Join us on this intriguing journey to unravel the mystery of Stockholm Syndrome. The term Stockholm Syndrome originates from a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden back in 1973. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill heist. Over the course of 6 days, 4 hostages were held captive by 2 armed robbers in a bank vault. The ordeal was intense, fraught with danger, and broadcast live to an astonished Swedish public. What baffled everyone was the unexpected bond that developed between the hostages and their captors. The captives, instead of fearing their captors, began to empathize with them. They started to see their captors not as threats, but as their protectors against the police. One of the hostages even went so far as to say she was more afraid of the police rescuing her than of the robbers. Post-rescue, the hostages defended their captors, refused to testify against them, and even raised money for their legal defense. This bizarre and seemingly inexplicable behavior intrigued the world, leading to a flurry of research and speculation. The renowned criminologist and psychiatrist Niels Bejerot was one of the first to study this phenomenon. He suggested that the hostages' survival instincts, combined with the intense shared experience of the crisis, led to this unusual emotional bonding. He named this phenomenon Stockholmssyndromet, after the location of the bank. However, the international media found this name a bit of a mouthful and quickly renamed it Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is not officially recognized as a disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. However, it is widely acknowledged in the field of psychology as a complex emotional response to a traumatic situation. It is seen in various contexts, such as abusive relationships and cult memberships, where the victim develops an emotional connection with their abuser. This unusual bonding during a crisis led to the identification of a psychological phenomenon we now know as Stockholm Syndrome. What leads a person to develop feelings for their abuser? Let's delve into the causes and symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome. To unravel the mystery of Stockholm Syndrome, we must first take a journey into the realm of psychology. Stockholm Syndrome is not a choice. It's a survival mechanism, a subconscious response to a threat. When faced with danger, humans are wired to either fight, flee, or freeze. However, when these options are unavailable, the mind may resort to another defense mechanism, bonding with the threat. This bonding is often a result of prolonged exposure to danger coupled with intermittent acts of kindness from the abuser. The victim begins to perceive these small mercies as genuine concern, fostering an emotional attachment. This attachment, however, is nothing more than an invisible chain tying the victim to their tormentor. Now let's look at the common signs and symptoms. They are often subtle and can easily go unnoticed, making the syndrome even more insidious. The first sign is an empathetic understanding of the captor's motives, often to the point of defending their actions. The victim may also refuse help from outsiders or authorities, fearing it might escalate the situation. Another symptom is the distortion of perception. The victim may start to view the world through the abuser's lens, perceiving threats where there are none. This skewed perception often leads to mistrust of family, friends, and authorities. The final sign is the development of positive feelings towards the captor and negative feelings towards self. The victim may feel a strong bond with their abuser, often accompanied by feelings of guilt or shame for being unable to escape or fight back. Understanding these causes and symptoms can help identify and support individuals who may be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. Remember, these invisible chains can be broken. With proper support and treatment, victims can reclaim their freedom and rebuild their lives. How common is Stockholm Syndrome and who does it affect the most? The prevalence of Stockholm Syndrome is a complex matter to assess. It's not as widely recognized or diagnosed as other psychological conditions such as depression or anxiety. This is partly because it often occurs in extreme, unusual circumstances like kidnappings or hostage situations, which are fortunately not everyday occurrences. However, when these extraordinary circumstances do occur, Stockholm Syndrome is believed to affect a significant proportion of people involved. While it can affect anyone, certain demographic groups might be more susceptible than others. Some studies suggest that individuals with a history of emotional abuse or trauma may be more likely to develop Stockholm Syndrome if they find themselves in a hostage-like scenario. This is not to say that it's exclusive to these groups. Stockholm Syndrome is a complex psychological response that can affect anyone, regardless of their background or experiences. The impact of Stockholm Syndrome on an individual's emotions and social skills is profound. It can trigger intense feelings of empathy and affection towards the captor, often coupled with a strong desire to defend them. This emotional bond, illogical as it may seem, can be so strong that it persists even after the captivity ends. Socially, the syndrome can create a significant barrier. The emotional bond with the captor can lead to a deep sense of isolation from others, making social interactions challenging. It can also result in a distorted perception of danger and safety, making it difficult for the individual to trust others or form healthy relationships. So, while Stockholm Syndrome may not be as widespread as other psychological disorders, its impact on those it affects is profound and far-reaching. It can shape their emotional landscape, alter their social interactions, and in some cases redefine their perception of reality.